Mom always warned that being too handsome would only lead to women deceiving me, so I purposely kept these heavy, thick bangs to hide my face. Eventually, I tied the knot with Sumian, a high society heiress, who claimed it was love at first sight. I genuinely believed she wasn't shallow or obsessed with my physical appearance, convinced that she cherished the soul residing deep within me. But everything shattered during that horrific car accident, when Sumian used her own body as a shield to protect me, leaving her critically injured and mangled in the explosion. I stumbled breathlessly toward her hospital ward, heart racing, only to overhear Sumian's mother's voice echoing from inside, "Mian Mian, you married such a hideous, repulsive man, making our entire bloodline a laughingstock for the world to see. And now you're recklessly throwing your life away for him. Just how much longer do you intend to carry on this ridiculous farce?" The room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence for several moments, followed by Sumian's chillingly calm, emotionless voice, "Mother, you know exactly what it is that I truly desire." Her mother's voice trembled with sheer unadulterated rage. "I knew it. You're still doing all of this for Lu Ziqian. Let me make this crystal clear to you. You are the most elite successor of our prestigious family, and Lu Ziqian will never ever step foot through our door. No matter how much you love him, it's utterly futile. And using Zhang Jingzhou just to provoke us won't work either." I stood frozen in my tracks, paralyzed, as a numbing chill seeped into the very marrow of my bones. For the sake of Lu Ziqian. But who on earth is Lu Ziqian? A wave of overwhelming panic and a crushing sense of impending doom hit me like a freezing, relentless tide, drowning me in an instant of pure terror. Leaning against the cold wall, I recoiled and retreated back to my room. With trembling fingers, I fumbled for my phone and fired off an urgent text to a private investigator. "Investigate every single link between Sumian and Lu Ziqian. I want details the more exhaustive the better." Before long, a barrage of files and photographs flooded my screen. Lu Ziqian, the eldest son of the Lu family and Sumian's first love. They were a perfect match in status and pedigree. A handsome man and a beautiful woman. The elite circle's most celebrated golden couple. 3 years ago, they were on the brink of marriage, until a premarital checkup revealed Lu Ziqian was infertile. For a top-tier powerhouse dynasty like the Su family, producing an heir is the absolute non-negotiable priority. Naturally, the Su family vehemently opposed the union, yet Sumian stubbornly insisted on marrying him anyway. To end it, the Su family struck back ruthlessly, launching a brutal campaign to crush the Lu family's business. Ultimately, the Lu family buckled under the agonizing pressure, forcing Lu Ziqian to sever ties and break up with Sumian. Following the split, Sumian began a relentless streak of blind dates. Yet she harbored a deep disdain for every single man she met. That was until she encountered me, the most notorious ugly duckling in the social circle. She only married me as a blatant act of defiance against her family, a desperate gamble to force them into letting her marry Lu Ziqian. Staring at the cold text on my screen, I suddenly burst into laughter. But as I laughed, hot bitter tears began to stream down my face. Mom warned me that being too handsome would lead to deception. Yet even by playing the fool and hiding my looks, I was still played. And this betrayal? It's far more absolute, more pathetic, and more tragic. These past 3 years of what I perceived as pure marital bliss were nothing more than a meticulously choreographed charade. I sat alone in the silence of my room for a long, grueling time. Finally, I pulled out my phone and dialed Sumian's mother. I spoke with eerie composure. "I want a divorce from Sumian." Her mother's voice shrieked in utter disbelief. "Excuse me, what did you just say?" "Zhang Jingzhou, look at yourself in the mirror. You look like that. And yet, you have the audacity to initiate a divorce. Do you have any idea how many elite men are crawling on their knees just to marry Mian Mian?" I replied with a flat, icy tone. "What I look like is absolutely none of your business. This marriage is over. I am dead set on leaving. If the Su family refuses to cooperate, I'll involve my lawyers and settle this through the courts. A public scandal won't benefit anyone when things get ugly." Sumian's mother finally snapped, sealing the deal. "Fine. I'll handle the divorce arrangements myself. Just give it a few days." After hanging up, I immediately processed my discharge papers and left the hospital. The moment I stepped into our home, my first act was to purge everything. Every single gift Sumian had bestowed upon me over the years, the luxury watches, the designer rings, and the priceless collectibles, I hauled them all out and dumped them in the trash. It felt like I was finally discarding 3 years of my own pathetic stupidity. A few days later, Sumian finally returned home. Her voice was uncharacteristically soft and gentle as she spoke. "Today is your birthday. I've arranged a grand banquet in your honor. Since we have some time to spare, how about I take you to pick out a new suit first?" I whispered a single hollow word, "Fine." Sumian drove me to an ultra-high-end boutique, but the second we stepped inside, her phone began to vibrate. She glanced at me and said, "Go ahead and start browsing. I need to take this call." I didn't care in the slightest. As I headed upstairs to browse the suit, a particular dark striped ensemble caught my eye. I turned to the clerk and said, "I'll take this one, please wrap it." Suddenly, a man's voice cut in from right behind me. "I'm taking this suit for myself." I spun around to see the man speaking, and the blood in my veins instantly turned to ice. Lu Ziqian, that same face from the photos leaning against Sumian, The arrogant, strikingly handsome face was now standing right in front of me in the flesh. Lu Ziqian stepped forward, his voice low yet dripping with a dismissive edge. My apologies. I've taken a liking to this suit as well. I realized you arrived first, but... Oh shit it. He scanned me from head to toe with a condescending gaze, his lips curling into a perfectly calculated mocking smirk. I honestly think it suits my physique much better. Why don't you be a sport and just hand it over? I ignored him and turned back to the clerk. I'm not letting it go. Ring it up. Lu Ziqian reached out, brazenly grabbing the other corner of the suit jacket. I really am quite fond of this, sir, he insisted. Given how you look, whatever you wear will look about the same anyway. Why not do me a favor and let me have it instead? The two of us stood there in a tense standoff, the air thick with the silent heavy scent of gunpowder. Then Sumian's cold, aloof voice echoed from the stairwell. What's going on here? She walked up after finishing her call and witnessed the scene, her brow twitching in a nearly imperceptible frown. The moment Lu Ziqian saw her, his eyes lit up with a spark. Yet he didn't loosen his grip on the fabric of the suit. Mian, you're here too. His eyes darted between Sumian and me for a moment, as a look of sudden realization washed over his face. Ah, I see. So this must be your husband. Had I known it was Mr. Jiang, I wouldn't have tried to claim it. Go ahead, let Mr. Jiang have the suit. He spoke while finally releasing his hold. But in the very next heartbeat, Sumian snatched the suit directly out of my hands and shoved it toward Lu Ziqian. She looked at Lu Ziqian, her voice softening significantly as she said, no need to yield. This style was made for you. Go try it on. A flicker of smug triumph flashed in Lu Ziqian's eyes as he took the suit and disappeared into the fitting room. Only then did Sumian finally turn her attention toward me. She said with chilling indifference, Jingzhou, that man just now was Lu Ziqian, an old acquaintance of mine. He's just blunt and straightforward, he meant no harm. It's just a single suit. We can simply choose another one. I fought to suppress the choking sob and the surging agony, clawing at my throat, turning toward another rack of clothes. I blindly grabbed a plain, unremarkable black suit. Right then, the fitting room curtain swept open, and Lu Ziqian stepped out into the light. The dark patterned fabric perfectly accentuated his physique, highlighting his broad shoulders, narrow waist, and long legs. The shop assistants gasped in admiration. Mr. Lu, it's perfect. It looks like it was custom tailored just for you. Even Sumian's gaze remained fixed on Lu Ziqian. Lu Ziqian asked brightly, Mian, how do I look? His eyes flickered toward me with a subtle mocking glance. Sumian nodded slightly, her voice filled with certainty. Yes, it's excellent. Lu Ziqian strolled over to her side, with a natural effortless smile. By the way, I heard tonight is Mr. Jiang's birthday banquet. Sumian gave a curt nod. It is. Lu Ziqian looked at me and added, I happen to be free tonight. Surely Mr. Jiang wouldn't mind if I came to celebrate with you. Before I could even open my mouth to refuse, Sumian interjected, Of course we don't mind. You're more than welcome. The Grand Hyatt penthouse ballroom was ablaze with dazzling lights. The birthday bash Sumian arranged for me was incredibly lavish, inviting nearly half of the city's high society elite. Clad in that dull, inconspicuous suit, I stood beside Sumian, like a misplaced invisible shadow. Shortly after the festivities began, Sumian presented me with a gift in front of everyone, a multi-million-dollar diamond-encrusted watch. As the black and gold box clicked open, the room erupted in hushed gasps and murmurs of sheer envy. I took it, my voice sounding hollow as I said, thanks. Lu Ziqian made his grand entrance a bit later. The moment he appeared, he commanded the entire room's attention. In his bespoke suit and perfectly styled hair, with that dashing, radiant smile, he looked as if he were the true leading man of the night. Lu Ziqian walked straight up to me and said with feigned sincerity, Forgive my tardiness. I didn't have time to prepare a proper gift. I hope you won't take offense, Mr. Jiang, but I'd like to offer a small performance. Let me play a melody to wish you a very happy birthday. Having said that, he turned back to Sumian with a knowing smile. Mian, I recall you being quite the virtuoso on the piano. Why don't we perform a four-hands piece together? It would certainly add some much-needed flair to Mr. Jiang's celebration, don't you think? Sumian looked into Lu Ziqian's expectant, gleaming eyes, glanced briefly at my silent form, and agreed to the idea. She gracefully strolled over to the grand piano. Soon, a flawlessly synchronized melody filled the hall. The man was dashingly handsome, the woman radiantly stunning. Seated together, they were the embodiment of a perfect masterpiece. The whispers from the crowd grew louder. Now that is a real match. If only CEO Su had married Mr. Lu back then, imagine how grand it would be. That Jiang Jingzhou is literally just wasting space. A man that repulsive? Actually snagging the most exquisite heiress in the elite circle. What an absolute travesty. Every single word felt like a needle dipped in lethal venom, stabbing incessantly into the depths of my heart. I couldn't endure another second of this mockery. I turned and retreated toward the balcony. Soft footsteps echoed behind me, followed by a delicate, supple body pressing close as slender arms wrapped firmly around my waist from behind. My entire body stiffened in an instant. Sumian's voice drifted up from behind my back. Why did you run off all by yourself? Don't let those people's petty words get to you. At that exact moment, the balcony's glass door was violently flung open, Lu Ziqian stood in the doorway, his face deathly pale. His voice cracked with a sob. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted. With that, he spun around and bolted away. Sumian released her hold on me almost instantly. She spoke hurriedly. I need to go make a quick call. Then she frantically chased after him. I couldn't stay at this wretched birthday banquet for another heartbeat. Just as I reached the driveway at the hotel entrance, a shadow stepped out to block my path. It was Lu Ziqian. He sneered provocatively. Mr. Jiang, isn't it a bit rude for the guest of honor to ghost his own party? Or could it be that seeing Mian chase after me left a bitter taste in your mouth? I had no desire to engage in his pathetic games. I tried to sidestep him to leave, but Lu Ziqian reached out to block me. Don't go just yet. Let's have a little chat about Mian and this absolutely pathetic joke of a marriage. I think it's high time you learned the truth about a few things. I spat out with icy resolve, get out of my way. But Lu Ziqian wouldn't let it rest, refusing to back down. He even lunged forward, vice gripping my wrist with his hand. Let me tell you something about Mian. We began scuffling violently right there on the driveway. Suddenly, Lu Ziqian's foot seemed to slip on the pavement. With a sharp shriek, he began to fall backward, instinctively clutching my arm with a death grip. I was dragged down with him, completely losing my balance. The screeching of tires and a sickening metallic crash erupted almost simultaneously. Amidst the absolute chaos, I felt a massive crushing force slam into me. The world began to spin in a dizzying blur. A searing, burning agony erupted across my forehead and cheek. A warm, thick liquid instantly flooded down, blurring my vision. Lu Ziqian's piercing screams echoed right in my ear. Pain and vertigo swallowed me whole as consciousness faded. But through the haze, I thought I saw Sumian's figure rushing toward us. On that face that was always so stoic and frigid, for the very first time, I saw a clear look of pure panic. Then I caught fragments of a desperate conversation that felt like it was drifting from miles away. CEO Su, both victims are critically injured. They need immediate surgery. But there is only one operating theater available. Mr. Jiang has sustained severe facial trauma. The lacerations are incredibly deep. Without immediate care, he will be permanently disfigured. Mr. Lu has injured his hand. If not treated now, he may never play the piano again. Then Sumian's voice cut through the air, save Lu Ziqian first. His hands are his life. He needs them for the piano. The doctor hesitated. But what about Mr. Jiang? Sumian replied with a chilling coldness, don't worry about him. To a man like him, his appearance doesn't matter at all. Doesn't matter. Those 3 words felt like a serrated blade, stabbing straight through the center of my heart. My world plunged into total darkness, and I spiraled into complete unconsciousness. When I finally drifted back to reality, I was in a hospital ward. The door creaked open, and Lu Ziqian strolled in, flanked by a group of his friends. He walked to the bedside, scanning me from head to toe. Jiang Jingzhou, I heard you were hit pretty hard. Your face was practically shredded to pieces. I honestly thought you'd be permanently mutilated this time. I suppose the specialists hired by the Su family are quite formidable, considering they actually managed to patch you up, but even with those wounds fully healed, nothing can mask that inherent ugliness of yours. The group of sycophants behind him erupted into snickering laughter. I squeezed my eyes shut, not even deigning to give them a glance. I muttered a single cold word, get out. Before Lu Ziqian could even offer a retort, a girl beside him clad in a flashy pink outfit instantly lost her temper. Who do you think you're talking to with that attitude? Ziqian was kind enough to visit you and you dare tell him to get out. It's bad enough that you're hideously repulsive, but your lack of basic decency is even worse. I snapped my eyes open and stared directly at Lu Ziqian. Take your lapdogs and get the hell out of here. You are absolutely not welcome in this room. The girl in pink turned a shade of crimson from sheer rage. Who are you calling a dog, you freak? She raised her hand, aiming a sharp slap directly at my face. Just as her palm was about to make contact, a woman dressed in a striking wine red long dress stepped in and caught the girl's wrist. Now, Lily, it's in poor taste to get physical with the patient. She scanned me up and down as I lay there in the hospital bed, a malicious predatory smirk playing on her lips. Mr. Jiang, right? You certainly have a stubborn little temper. However, I happen to have a specific method for dealing with men who don't know their place. She took 2 predatory steps forward, looming over my bed, her gaze lingering on me with a greasy, insolent intensity. Men like you, with mediocre looks and oversized egos, are a dime a dozen in my world. You act all righteous and dignified on the outside, but we both know your mind is constantly in the gutter. As she spoke, she actually reached out to rip away my blanket. I barked out a stern warning, get the hell away from me, but the woman pinned my shoulder down with brute force, while her other hand aggressively yanked open the collar of my hospital gown. Her eyes shimmered with a mix of excitement and twisted disgust. Tusk! Your body is actually decent, I suppose. The face is a lost cause, though. Oh well, as long as you can perform, that's all that matters. I struggled desperately to break free of her grip, but Lu Ziqian and his crew just watched, some with cold sneers, others with folded arms enjoying the entertainment. The girl in the pink dress even went as far, as pulling out her phone to record a video of my humiliation. Despair and a scorching fury instantly obliterated my sanity. My eyes darted to the heavy glass vase perched on the nightstand. I snatched the weighted vessel with a surge of adrenaline and brought it crashing down onto the woman's skull with all my might. The impact erupted into a chaotic symphony of her agonizing shrieks and shattering glass. At that precise moment, the ward door swung wide open. A nurse carrying a tray of fresh bandages stepped into the room. Witnessing the bloody carnage, she let out a piercing scream. "Security! Call security immediately. Call the police. Hurry, contact the authorities now." Inside the police station, I was separated from Lu Ziqian's group for interrogation. His side maintained a unified front, accusing me of cold-blooded assault. I claimed self-defense, yet my words fell on deaf ears. After all, who would ever believe a hideous man like me could be a victim of sexual harassment? Before long, I was shoved into a cold detention cell. I knew Lu Ziqian wouldn't squander this perfect chance to bury me. The following 7 days were a waking nightmare. A literal hell of freezing bars, rancid food, and cellmates who deliberately provoked me, drenching me with ice water at midnight. My unhealed wounds were treated with nothing but sheer brutality. The psychological and physical torment was relentless. On the day of my release, I received a call from Sumian's mother. Her voice was laced with a sense of relief and malicious triumph. "The divorce papers are finalized. From this second on, you have zero ties to Mian Mian or the Su family. We'll send a bit of hush money to your father. So don't you dare show your face around here again." I hung up the phone without a word. I hailed a ride and returned to the villa one last time. Moving like a ghost, I didn't alert a single soul. Heading straight upstairs to the master bedroom. There I executed 3 final tasks. First, I packed every last shred of my belongings. Second, I meticulously washed away every ounce of my ugly makeup. As the steam clouded the mirror and slowly began to clear, it revealed a face that had been hidden for far too long. A visage so breathtakingly handsome it was soul-stirring. Third, I pulled out my phone and booked a one-way ticket for the earliest flight available. I grabbed a cab to the airport and checked in for my flight. Throughout security and boarding, I kept my head slightly bowed, yet that impossibly striking face still drew an endless barrage of stunned gasps, curious stares, and the sound of hidden cameras clicking away. I remained completely oblivious to the attention. Or perhaps, I simply no longer cared. The aircraft ascended into the vast clouds, leaving that city the site of all my unbearable agony and treacherous deceit, vanishing far behind me. What I didn't realize at the time was that shortly after I boarded the plane, the countless candid photos of me taken at the airport had surged onto the local trending charts with terrifying speed, and were spreading like wildfire. Gaudier hottie spotted at the airport. Is this level of visual perfection even real? I give you 3 minutes. I need every single detail on this mysterious hunk. Compared to him, Lu Ziqian, the supposed #1 socialite bachelor, is nothing but absolute trash. In an instant, the photos went viral, and the entire internet was hunting for this otherworldly man. Soon layers of my identity were being peeled back, until finally, an earth-shattering revelation was dropped online. Wait, isn't this the Su family's supposedly ugly son-in-law Jiang Jingzhou? The internet exploded. As the scandal reached its fever pitch, Su Mian was in her company's top-floor boardroom, overseeing a high-stakes international merger. The atmosphere in the meeting was suffocatingly tense, with her spinning a pen listening to reports, with her trademark icy composure and absolute control, until her assistant burst in frantic, not even bothering to knock on the door, practically slamming a tablet onto the table in front of her. "CEO Su, you need to see this. It's your husband." Su Mian's brow furrowed, in sharp displeasure as she glanced at the screen, and then her gaze froze. On the display was that high-definition, candid photo taken at the airport. With his deep, soulful eyes slightly downcast, he possessed a fragile yet cold-piercing beauty. Su Mian's pupils constricted violently. She stared deathly at the photograph. Is this truly Jiang Jingzhou? Was this the same man she had been married to for 3 years? The husband she had never deigned to look at properly. She quickly swiped through the thread, stumbling upon the backstory netizens had unearthed about my mother, and the theories behind why I had spent over a decade disguising myself behind a mask of ugliness. It felt as though an invisible hand had violently seized her heart, slowly and agonizingly twisting it until she couldn't breathe. The boardroom plunged into a deathly silence, with every executive holding their breath as they cautiously observed their leader. This young powerhouse, usually a master of the poker face, now displayed a rare cracked facade as the board members watched her in stunned awe. The young ruler who never let her emotions slip now wore a look of unprecedented, stark and utterly hollow shock. Su Mian suddenly bolted upright, her voice cold as she commanded, "Meeting adjourned." The chair legs screeched violently against the polished floor, leaving a piercing, jagged echo in the air. She snatched the tablet, without granting a single soul a glance, and stormed out of the conference room. Retreating to her penthouse office, she slammed the lock shut, standing before the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, turning her back on the city's glittering skyline. She obsessively swiped through every single photo, different angles, varying lights, Even the blurry silhouettes and candid side profiles, every single shot was breathtakingly, hauntingly handsome. This wasn't the result of mere makeup or plastic surgery. She recalled how I always kept my head lowered in shame. She remembered the suit shop and the way I asked if she felt I wasn't worthy. She remembered the precinct where I rasped out a broken "why," and she remembered my eyes gradually turning silent and hollow. Her heart began to hammer against her ribs, faster and more chaotic than ever before. An indescribable throbbing agony slammed into her chest with the force of a tidal wave. She had never experienced a sensation quite like this. Even when Lu Ziqian demanded a breakup years ago, she had only felt a surge of indignation, unwillingness, and the suffocating frustration of being controlled. But it was nothing like this moment. This realization that something vital and irreplaceable was rapidly slipping through her trembling fingers, and no matter how desperately she tried to grasp it, she only caught a void of freezing, paralyzing panic. A sharp knock echoed at the office door, and before she could answer, Shen Nanqiao burst straight in. He was one of the few people Su Mian actually called a friend, a man known for his flamboyant and bold personality. The moment he crossed the threshold, he boomed, "The entire world is in an absolute frenzy outside, and you're just sitting here staring at..." Shen Nanqiao's voice trailed off abruptly. His gaze fell upon Su Mian's face, and he froze in his tracks. Su Min stood with her back to the light, her expression unreadable. But Shen Nanqiao had known her for far too many years, not to recognize the turbulent storm brewing, and the desperately suppressed emotional upheaval in her eyes. Shen Nanqiao had known her for far too many years, not to recognize the turbulent storm brewing, and the desperately suppressed emotional upheaval in her eye. Shen Nanqiao stepped closer and asked, "What's with that face?" Then he caught a glimpse of the tablet screen in her hands, displaying that breathtakingly handsome face of mine. He let out a speechless clicking sound. "I mean, looking like this, you haven't actually caught feelings, have you?" Su Mian's body stiffened almost imperceptibly. Paralyzed. Caught feelings, don't be ridiculous. Yet the sharp, undeniable pang of agony in her chest, along with the countless ignored details from the last 3 years, surged back into her mind with a vengeful intensity, silently screaming a protest against her weak denial. Su Mian averted her gaze and asked in a frigid tone, "What are you even doing here?" Shen Nanqiao dropped the playful act, though his eyes remained fixed on her, searching as he said, "I almost forgot why I came. I saw the trending topics and had to check on you. I never imagined it was actually my brother-in-law, but hey, since we shouldn't let such a prize go to a stranger, any chance you could introduce us?" Su Mian cut him off instantly, her voice carrying a chilling edge she hadn't even noticed. "What kind of nonsense is that?" "He is my husband." Shen Nanqiao blinked in confusion, his expression turning bizarre as he asked, "Husband Mian Mian, do you really not know yet?" Su Mian snapped back. "Know what?" Shen Nanqiao tapped a few things on his phone and thrust it in front of her face. The Su Group's official website. They released a formal statement 30 minutes ago. It says you and Mr. Jiang Jingzhou have officially and amicably ended your marriage. Su Mian snatched the phone away with a violent jerk. On the screen in cold stark black and white, the statement stamped with the Su Group's official seal was crystal clear. Su Mian stared at those few short lines of text as the blood rushed to her head and then drained away just as fast, leaving her limbs numb and icy. The source of the post was the group's PR department, but no one possesses that level of clearance besides her, except for her own parents. This simply cannot be happening. She immediately snatched the office phone and dialed the extension for the chief legal officer, her voice dropping to a lethal icy chill. "Investigate it. I want an immediate investigation into the legal lead." Her voice was sharp enough to cut bone. "Find the divorce settlement between me and Jiang Jingzhou right now. Who authorized this? Who signed the documents, and why was I kept in the dark?" The moment she slammed the phone down, her fingers were visibly trembling with rage. She frantically dialed another number. This time it was her mother. The call was answered almost instantly. Su Mian's voice was dangerously low, each syllable forced out through gritted teeth. "Who gave you the authority to release that statement?" "I never signed a thing, so how can there be a divorce?" There was a brief, pregnant pause from her mother, before her voice spiked in defensive annoyance. "You didn't sign?" "But Jiang Jingzhou came to us himself, absolutely dead set on ending this marriage. He signed the papers, and I had our people finalize the rest." "What, you mean he didn't even tell you?" "He reached out to me the very day he left the hospital, stating clearly that this marriage was over. He even threatened that if the Yi Su family didn't cooperate, he'd hire lawyers and turn it into a public scandal. Since he's so ungrateful and lacks all common decency, why should the Su family keep him around just to embarrass us?" "The hospital." Su Mian's mind latched onto the keyword, her heart racing. "What hospital?" Her mother spoke rapidly, dismissively. "That time you were hospitalized after saving him in the crash. He sustained some minor injuries too, didn't he? He checked himself out later, and then called me immediately to demand a divorce. I suppose he finally realized how worthless he truly was. Good riddance to him for knowing when to crawl away. Mian Mian, it's a blessing that a man like that is gone. Mother will find you a far more suitable elite young master." Su Mian couldn't listen to another word. She cut the line, her mind reeling. The hospital. The time he was hospitalized with those injuries. A horrifying, soul-crushing realization slithered into her heart like a cold, venomous viper. She immediately dialed the director of the hospital, her voice tight and strained with dread. Pull up the surveillance footage from my last hospital stay, specifically the camera covering the entrance to my ward. The few minutes spent waiting felt like an eternal century. The notification chime for a new email finally echoed. Sumin clicked the attachment opening the security video. In the frame, she watched the footage within the ward hallway. On the screen, her mother was seen entering the patient's room. Shortly after the door closed, I emerged from the adjacent room, my face deathly pale, with layers of gauze still wrapped tightly around my forehead. My footsteps were unsteady and frail. I approached her ward door as if to push it open, but my hand froze mid-air on the handle. And then I simply stood there motionless and paralyzed. The video had no audio, but she could see her mother's mouth moving with agitated intensity, contrasted by her own cold, indifferent side profile as she replied. She saw me leaning heavily against the wall, my body swaying almost imperceptibly for a second. She watched as I slowly lifted my head, staring toward the door of the hospital room. In those eyes that usually stayed downcast and submissive was a crystal clear reflection of pure shock, utter confusion, and then a creeping bone-chilling despair and icy realization. Finally, I retreated step by agonizing step back into my own room, my figure looking as fragile as a withered leaf about to shatter. Sumian stared at the screen with a death grip, her fingertips turning numb and cold, as if the very blood in her veins had frozen solid. Sumian let out a low, hollow laugh. She raised her hand to cover her eyes, yet warm, bitter droplets still managed to seep through her fingers, surging out without warning or restraint. Shen Nankiao stood off to the side, watching his friend, who had never appeared so utterly broken, wanting to offer comfort but ultimately just letting out a heavy sigh. He quietly backed out of the room, closing the door softly behind him. The light outside the window began to dim and fade away. Sumian sat there, shrouded in the gathering gloom, resembling a lifeless, hollowed-out statue. Nobody knows how much time slipped by before she dropped her hand, revealing bloodshot eyes, though the confusion and agony within them had been replaced by a nearly obsessive, ruthless determination. She grabbed her phone and dialed her assistant's number, her voice raspy yet brooking no argument. Track him down. Use every single connection at our disposal. Locate Zhang Jingzhou with the utmost urgency. I need to know his exact coordinates right now. Immediately this instant. The search hit a brick wall from the very beginning. Sumian mobilized her entire exhaustive network of connections, but the only intel they could dig up was this. I had used my official ID to purchase a single, one-way ticket to a famous tourist destination in the deep southwest. She caught the next flight out immediately, but the trail went stone cold the moment she landed. I hadn't used my ID to check into any hotels, guest houses, or local inns. There were no records of any vehicle rentals either. It was as if I had prepared a massive stash of cash beforehand, and then like a single drop of water, I had silently evaporated into thin air within that vast sea of people famous for its labyrinthine landscapes and dense ancient towns. Sumian search parties scoured nearly every inch of that city and every possible hideout in the surrounding areas. They found absolutely nothing. As the days bled into weeks, her years of stoic composure began to show jagged cracks. Insomnia began to consume her. During high-level meetings, she would suddenly drift off, staring vacantly into the void. While her assistant reported, she would abruptly interject with a question that had no context or logic. Where do you think a man like him could go all alone? The assistant lowered his head, not daring to utter a word. Shen Nankiao came to visit her, sighing at her haggard state. You've really fallen for him, haven't you? Sumian didn't even try to deny it. She realized that perhaps her feelings for Lu Ziqian had always been nothing more than a habitual need for possession, and a lingering obsession from an unfinished youth. When Lu Ziqian left, she felt rage and indignation, feeling like a pawn of her family and fate. But with my disappearance, what she felt was the raw, agonizing sensation of her heart being carved out, leaving a hollow, throbbing void. It was a soul-crushing fear, a sharp and alien panic that he was gone forever, leaving her completely lost and adrift. Lu Ziqian, unable to reach her by phone, stormed directly to the office. The reception didn't dare stop him. He stormed into the executive office wing and cornered Sumian in the parking garage just as she was leaving. Lu Ziqian lunged forward and grabbed her arm, clutching her arm with desperate force, whining in a pitiful, aggrieved tone, "Mian Mian, why have you been ghosting me? Why aren't you picking up my calls? Is this all because of Zhang Jingzhou? Listen to me, it's all a massive fabrication. He set this whole thing up just to get revenge on us? There's no way on earth he actually looks like that. He must have gone under the knife for extreme plastic surgery, or used some kind of dark, twisted sorcery. He's purely doing this to bait your attention and sabotage the bond we share. Mian Mian, don't let his pathetic lies deceive you." Sumian simply stared at him, listening to the torrent of vitriol and malicious assumptions and insults he hurled my way. In her mind, the image of the proud, dashing man she once knew was rapidly crumbling and peeling away. revealing an unrecognizable alien core of sickening calculation and distorted jealousy. One by one, she pried Lu Ziqian's clutching fingers off of her arm. She spoke, her voice vibrating with a lethal chill and devoid of any warmth. Lu Ziqian, what he looks like, or whether it's real or fake, is absolutely none of your business. As for whether he is worthy of me or not, she paused for a heavy beat, her gaze piercing into Lu Ziqian's suddenly deathly pale face. That is strictly for me to decide. Lu Ziqian stammered, his voice trembling. Mian Mian. Yu Sumin cut him off ruthlessly. Her tone grew even more frigid as she continued. And another thing. What Lin Yao did to Jiang Jingzhou in the detention center, and the special instructions you gave the people inside. The moment Jiang Jingzhou was locked up, did you truly believe I'd never find out? Lu Ziqian's eyes bulged in pure unadulterated terror. As he heard Su Mian state, out of respect for our past, I won't press charges this time. Su Mian yanked open her car door without sparing him another glance. Do not test my patience ever again, and stay the hell away from me and him. The car roared to life and sped away, leaving a trail of dust. Lu Ziqian stood frozen in place, a numbing cold seeping into his bones. A few days later, by a stroke of pure coincidence, Su Mian, while scrolling through an obscure niche designer forum, her attention was seized by a collection of anonymously posted sketches. A spark of intuition flared within Su Mian, and she instantly ordered a trace on the uploader's IP address. The coordinates pointed to a renowned water town in the south. A hazy, forgotten realization flickered through her mind. I had apparently minored in design during my university years, and my mother's ancestral roots happened to be in that very region. Su Mian bolted upright and commanded, "Prepare the private jet for Nanjing immediately." The assistant stammered, "But CEO Su, your video conference with the European branch is this afternoon." Without a second of hesitation, she barked, "Postpone it." Nanjing wasn't large, but it was a labyrinth of intersecting waterways, with inns and hidden boutiques tucked away in winding narrow alleys. The town was swarming with tourists, yet Su Mian clutched that barefaced photo of me from the airport, inquiring at every single establishment she passed. 3 days vanished with absolutely zero progress. She felt like she was hunting for a needle in a vast ocean, trapped in a maze of her own making, as her anxiety and sense of helplessness intensified by the hour. That night, she wandered into a quiet riverside lounge. The interior was bathed in a dim amber glow, with a soulful singer on stage strumming a guitar and crooning a melancholic classic ballad. Su Mian retreated to a secluded corner, ordering a glass of stiff liquor she barely touched, her hollow gaze fixed on the rippling water outside the window and the swaying reflections of the crimson lanterns. Suddenly, her vision locked onto a target. By the bar counter, a man dressed in a moon-white mandarin collar shirt. His side profile crashed into her line of sight. He was sitting with his back turned slightly away, but Su Mian's heart, in that singular heartbeat, felt as if it had been struck by a massive sledgehammer. It skipped a beat entirely, before erupting into a frantic, thundering rhythm. Jiang Jingzhou, she practically stumbled to her feet, bolting toward the bar in a desperate blur. She reached out and lunged, seizing the wrist of my pen-holding hand. My movements came to a dead halt. Slowly, I lifted my gaze. As I registered the person who had grabbed me, a fleeting spark of emotion flickered through those deep, dark eyes. A momentary tremor, like a pebble being tossed into the center of a placid lake. But in a mere blink, that ripple vanished, leaving behind nothing but a frigid, unfathomable void. Fluctuation, like a pebble tossed into the heart of a placid lake. But within a heartbeat, that ripple vanished completely, leaving behind nothing but a frigid, unfathomable void. I spoke with a sharp, chilling clarity. "Lady, you've got the wrong man." I wrenched my hand back with force, but Su Mian only tightened her grip, her fingertips trembling violently against my skin. Her eyes were feverish, tracing the contours of my face with a desperate, predatory hunger. Every single line of my features was foreign to her, yet they tugged at her very soul with a haunting familiarity. Agony, remorse, a manic euphoria of rediscovery, and something far more profound, an emotion so complex even she couldn't label it, collided and thrashed within her chest. Her voice cracked as she rasped, "I haven't." "Jingzhou, it's me. I finally found you. Come back with me. We need to talk. We need to fix this." I looked at her, and my lips curled into a faint ghost of a smirk. There was zero warmth in that curve, only a thick, saturating layer of mockery. "Go back. Back where exactly, Miss Su?" The entire world saw the Su Group's official divorce decree. That stamped and sealed divorce certificate landed in my hands just a few days ago. There is absolutely nothing left connecting us, and certainly nothing left to discuss. Su Mian took a frantic step forward, lunging to seize me once more, but I recoiled, making her grasp at empty air. She blurted out in a panic that was all a misunderstanding. "My mother issued that statement without my consent. I was completely in the dark. I never signed those papers. Jingzhou, it doesn't count." I replied with an icy detachment. "Who issued the statement makes no difference to me whatsoever. The reality is that we are divorced, legally, socially, and in the eyes of everyone on this planet. I am no longer associated with you, Su Mian. Let go, and get out of here. Stop intruding upon my life." Having said my piece, I turned to walk away. Su Mian suddenly screamed at the top of her lungs, "I was wrong. The handful of patrons in the bar all turned to stare. Oblivious to everything, she watched my resolute back as the words that had been churning in her heart captured the attention of every guest. Regardless of the scene, she watched my departing silhouette and those words she had rehearsed 1,000 times. Finally burst forth, Jingzhou, just give me one more chance. Can we please just start over? I'll fix everything, I swear. Lu Ziqian, my parents, everyone and everything that ever caused you pain. I will deal with all of it. I promise it will never happen again. I froze in my tracks but refused to turn around, simply whispering in a voice as thin as air, Sumian, this fresh start of yours, does it mean continuing to use me as a human shield against your family? Or perhaps acting as a disposable prop to prove your undying devotion to Lu Ziqian? Your mother was right about one thing. When I was ugly, I was a stain on the Su family name. Nothing more than a tool that brought you shame. Now that I'm attractive, have I suddenly become a trophy you can flaunt? A mere object to soothe your regrets and guilt? Sumian's face turned deathly pale, as if she'd been struck by a physical blow to the gut. She stumbled back a half step, her world reeling, her mouth hanging open, unable to utter a single sound. I didn't spare her another glance. Adjusting my bag, I continued coldly, I've received your apology, but I neither need it nor do I forgive you. Stop following me. I left her with one final sentence that chilled the bone. Otherwise, I'm calling the police. I pushed through the wooden doors of the lounge, my silhouette quickly, blending into the misty night and the rhythmic flow of the river. I vanished into the dark. Sumin stood there paralyzed, as if the very life had been drained out of her soul. The bar fell into a heavy, suffocating silence, punctuated only by the singer's low, melancholic crooning. Suddenly, as if fueled by a desperate resolve, she bolted out of the bar, sprinting in the direction where I had disappeared. She trailed me from a distance, watching me stroll into a riverside guest house bearing the Ziwan sign. A warm amber glow seeped through the traditional wooden lattice windows. She checked into an inn directly on the opposite bank, securing a room where the window was perfectly aligned with the lit room on Jiwan's second floor. She stood there by the glass, transfixed by that single light, staring at that glowing room on the second floor of Jiwan. She remained positioned by the window, watching that light until it finally flickered out, and the sky began to bleed into the pale colors of dawn. The next morning, she was awake before the sun, or more accurately, she hadn't slept a wink. She watched as I stepped out of the guest house early. I was dressed in a simple neutral tone linen, shirt paired with loose-fitting trousers, walking along the cobblestone path toward an ancient tree by the river. I set up my easel and canvas, facing the rhythmic flow of the water and the distant stone bridge, and began to paint the traditional black awning boats. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, dappling over my body, and face catching my expression of serene, absolute focus. Occasionally, local women out to do their morning laundry, or children running around at play, would stop to offer me a friendly greeting. I would look up and respond with a gentle smile. That smile was subtle, yet undeniably genuine, with eyes reflecting the morning light and the shimmer of the water. It was a side of me she had never witnessed, a relaxed, vibrant, and breathtakingly natural handsomeness. Sumian hid within the shadows of the alleyway entrance, greedily consuming every detail of the scene. The hollow void in her chest, however, throbbed with even more agonizing pain at the sight. She was nearly unable to keep her footing, standing there like a silent, broken statue for an eternity. She stayed until I packed my supplies and leisurely strolled back to Jiwan. At noon, she forced down a few bites of food at her inn. By the afternoon, she attempted to approach Jiwan, only to be intercepted by a middle-aged woman who looked kind, but possessed exceptionally sharp and shrewd eyes. The woman smiled and inquired, Miss, are you looking for someone or seeking a room? Sumian fought to keep her tone sounding composed and steady. I'm looking for Jiang Jingzhou. The lady chuckled softly and said, Ah, young Jiang. He's not in. Are you a friend of his, Miss? Sumian hesitated for a heartbeat before replying, I'm his wife. The lady's smile faded instantly, replaced by a gaze filled with icy scrutiny. She chimed in with sharp skepticism. His wife? That's odd. Young Jiang never breathed a word about one. He mentioned he was just traveling solo to clear his head. If you've got business with him, miss, feel free to leave a message. Traveling solo to find some peace. Miss, if it's urgent, you can leave your contact info, and I'll pass it along to him. Sumian, realizing she wasn't going to get any more intel, left her contact information and turned to walk away. Over the next 48 hours, she lingered around Jiwan like a restless ghost. She watched me buy groceries and cook my own meals, observed me hanging fresh linens out to dry in the courtyard, saw me chatting casually with the locals, and spotted me sitting on the stone river steps at dusk, lost in thought, watching the sunset bleed into the water in hues of crimson and gold. My life here was basic, rhythmic, and profoundly tranquil. A life without her presence, and without the suffocating weight of her schemes, humiliation, or constant emotional trauma. She felt like she was staring through a glass barrier, watching a beautiful world that no longer belonged to her. Until the afternoon of the third day, when this fragile peace was violently shattered. A sleek black sedan looking utterly out of place in the ancient town screeched to a halt right at Jiwan's entrance. The door swung open, and a fuming Lu Ziqian stomped out. Sumian's heart sank like lead, and she immediately gave chase. Inside the courtyard, I was lounging in a bamboo chair, focused on pruning a delicate pot of asparagus fern. Lu Ziqian erupted into a hysterical roar, Jiang Jingzhou. You persistent, haunting shadow of a man. Do you have no shame at all? You're already divorced from Mian Mian, yet you're still hiding in this hole trying to seduce her. Did you think flaunting this new face would be enough to snatch her back? Let me tell you something. Keep dreaming. I'm the one Mian Mian truly loves. It has always been me. You were nothing but a pawn she used to spite her parents. A pathetic and laughable substitute for the real thing. I calmly set my shears aside, with an unbothered, leisurely grace, and wiped my hands on a damp cloth. Only then did I finally lift my gaze to look at Lu Ziqian. I spoke with a chilling indifference. Mr. Lu, this is my private residence. A restricted personal space. Please see yourself out. Lu Ziqian erupted in a derisive, hysterical laugh, lunging forward to shove a finger in my face. I should leave. You're the one who needs to get lost. Dare you deny that Mian Mian chased you all the way here? Don't tell me you didn't leak your location, just to bait her into coming after you. You intentionally lured her here like some pathetic thirst trap. Sumian stepped into the courtyard at that exact moment. She witnessed Lu Ziqian pointing at me with arrogant aggression, saw his features twisted into a grotesque mask of fury, and heard the torrent of venomous insults spewing from his mouth. An unprecedented wave of primal rage instantly consumed her. Her voice wasn't loud, yet it was sharp as a blade dipped in ice carrying a lethal pressure. Lu Ziqian. Lu Ziqian's body stiffened as he whirled around to see Sumian, his face instantly morphing into a mask of feigned hurt and panic. Mian Mian, how? Why are you even here? Did you come all this way just to find me? Is this man harassing and bothering you again? Sumian ignored him completely, walking straight past him to stand before me. She glared at Lu Ziqian, her eyes burning with unadulterated naked disgust. I told you to never show your face in front of him again. Did you think my words were some kind of joke? Lu Ziqian was visibly shaken by the sheer intensity of her gaze, his voice trembling as he stammered. Mian Mian, I was just worried he'd deceive you again. He's a manipulative snake who faked being ugly just to marry you. And now he's showing his true face to seduce you into... Sumian cut him off with a verbal slap, her tone more frigid and severe than ever before. Shut up. Lu Ziqian, out of respect for our shared history, I am granting you one final absolute warning. Vanish from my sight this very second, or I won't hesitate to erase the Lu family from this city's map forever. Lu Ziqian looked as though he'd been struck by lightning. His eyes widened in pure shattered disbelief as he gasped. What? What did you just say? You destroy my family for the sake of this man, Sumian. How could you possibly? But she had already stopped looking at him, turning toward the two black-clad bodyguards at the gate, and barking a cold command, drag him out. The guards moved in immediately. They flanked Lu Ziqian, seizing him by both arms. Lu Ziqian thrashed and shrieked in denial, No, Mian Mian, you can't treat me like this. I'm the only one who truly loves you, this man. He was cut off as the bodyguard showed him zero mercy. He was unceremoniously dragged away by the guards and shoved into the back of the sedan. The car sped away into the distance. As his desperate roars gradually faded into silence, tranquility finally returned to the small courtyard. Only then did Sumian turn her gaze back toward me. I remained seated in my bamboo chair, eyes slightly downcast, staring at the fallen leaves Lu Ziqian had trampled into the dirt. My face was a mask of total indifference, as if that entire chaotic farce had nothing to do with me. Sumian spoke, her voice dropping to a whisper, heavy with a nearly pathetic plea. Jingzhou, please just come back home with me. She took a step forward, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away, avoiding her touch. Sumian, do you still not understand? The issue was never just Lu Ziqian. It was you. It was a marriage built from day one on cold calculation, deceit, and constant humiliation. It was the fact that you held someone else in your heart, while using me as a mere tool for 3 years. It was your silence when your mother pointed at me, calling me a hideous stain on your family. It was that moment in the tailor shop, when you snatched the suit from my hands to give it to him. And it was in the police station, when you said you didn't lack men and branded me a liar. With every sentence I uttered, Sumian's complexion grew a shade more deathly pale. I stood up from the chair, brushing non-existent dust from my trousers. Sumian, I don't even hate you anymore. Hating someone is far too exhausting. But I don't love you anymore either. There is no world in which I go back with you. I looked straight into her shattered, colorless face, watching the agony and absolute despair surging in her eyes, and I felt nothing. No spark, no anger, just a vast, hollow sense of peace. I'm doing perfectly fine on my own now. So please, exit my world for good. With that, I stopped looking at her, turned my back, and walked through the rustic wooden doors of Jiyuan. The door clicked shut softly right in her face, partitioning him away from the tranquil sanctuary that I had finally managed to build. The rustic doors of the water town sealed behind me, leaving Sumian standing outside on the cold pavement, like a majestic statue that had suddenly lost its pedestal. She remained there, frozen in place for an eternity. until the twilight deepened and the river lanterns flickered to life, stretching her lonely shadow into a thin, jagged line. She didn't dare knock on the door again. She knew it was a futile effort, because once certain doors are bolted from the inside, no amount of external force can ever hope to pry them open again. Soo-min eventually retreated to the capital, but while her body returned to the corporate world, her soul seemed to be perpetually adrift in that misty, water-veiled town where she left her heart. When Nankiao saw her again, he barely recognized his old friend. The stoic and composed Soo-min had vanished, replaced by a desperate gambler driven mad by love. Her first move was to unleash a thunderous, merciless assault on the Liu family. Within a mere fortnight, the once glamorous Liu clan was teetering on the brink, starved of capital and facing total bankruptcy. The Liu elders, swallowing their immense pride, begged for mercy on multiple occasions, even kneeling for hours in front of the Su group headquarters. Liu Ziqian himself knelt upon the freezing stone steps, shouting Soo-min's name until his voice cracked, invoking their history and past memories, pleading for her to show even a shred of leniency. Soo-min refused to grant him a single audience. She simply sent her assistant down to deliver one chilling message: touch what's mine and pay the price. The words "what's mine" were spoken with lethal emphasis, making it crystal clear exactly who she was protecting. The news of her ruthlessness spread like wildfire, sending shockwaves through the elite social circles. No one could have ever predicted that the Su-mian, who once catered to Liu Ziqian's every whim, would become so cold-blooded and pitiless when she turned her back. Shortly after, at a high-profile business summit, it was Su-mian's turn to take the podium. She walked onto the stage, but she didn't lead with economic trends or the projected future of the industry. Instead, standing under the blinding glare of the spotlights, facing a sea of business moguls, and the relentless flashing of media cameras, she uncharacteristically addressed her private life. She spoke with a calm, terrifying resolve: "I'll take this chance to clarify a certain matter. The divorce between myself and my former husband, Mr. Zhang Jingzhou, was absolutely not initiated by my own will." She spoke with a chilling calmness, seizing the moment. "I wish to set the record straight. The legal separation between me and Zhang Jingzhou was never what I desired. It was the result of a catastrophic misunderstanding." The room fell into a deathly pin-drop silence. Countless shocked, probing, and utterly incredulous gazes locked onto her. Su-mian met those stares head-on and continued to speak, every single syllable carrying the weight of a mountain. "I hereby solemnly declare that the only man I will ever recognize as my husband is Zhang Jingzhou. I am currently doing everything in my power to rectify my sins." She paused for a heavy beat, her eyes sweeping across the predatory, eager media outlets, as her voice dropped to a low, unquestionably dangerous warning. "I implore the public not to intrude upon his private life. Allow me and him the space for atonement and clarity." The words ignited an absolute uproar throughout the hall. A split second later, the deafening clicks of shutters and blinding flashes nearly drowned the venue. The trending topics exploded instantly, shattering records. Su-mian publicly begs for her husband's return. Zhang Jingzhou, Su-mian's only life partner. The cold CEO goes mad for love. Headlines ascended the charts at a terrifying velocity, followed by deep red hot tags and breaking news icons. The elder mother Su smashed her teacup the moment she saw the news. She stormed into the headquarters, shoving a finger in Su-mian's face as she shrieked, "Have you lost your mind? You've turned this family upside down for a man like that. You've pushed the Liu family to their absolute ruin, and now you humiliate yourself before the entire world." Su-mian looked up from her documents, her face a mask of total stoicism, but her eyes were terrifyingly frigid. She spoke, her voice calm yet heavy with the pressure of a looming storm. "Mother, if you still wish to acknowledge me as your daughter, then you will respect my choice." Mother Su was momentarily paralyzed by that gaze, speechless, before erupting in even greater fury. "For the sake of that man, you'd even discard your own mother." Su-mian slammed the file shut. She rose and walked toward the window, her words ringing out with absolute finality. "If I must choose between you and him, I choose him." Su-mian stood by the window, declaring her stance with lethal conviction. "If forced to choose between blood and my heart, I pick him." Her mother staggered, clutching the desk for support, staring in pure disbelief at her daughter's unyielding, isolated silhouette. She had never seen her like this before. Obsessive, paranoid, and completely reckless. She was like a lioness provoked, guarding her territory with primal ferocity. Anyone who dared to threaten her treasure would be torn to pieces. Su-mian didn't return to the water town immediately. She feared her presence would startle me, causing me to vanish once again. Instead, she chose a different tactic, forcing her presence into my life with stubborn persistence. Every day, a different package would arrive for me. Sometimes it was a bouquet of fresh purple irises, still glistening with morning dew. The card bore no signature, only a printed verse: "Seeing this brilliance, how could my heart not be in turmoil?" Other times, it was a VIP invitation to a private gallery auction, and in the enclosed catalog, a specific piece of ancient jade I had once glanced at had its page corner meticulously dog-eared. Sometimes it was a medicinal recipe for stomach health, paired with the finest ingredients sourced directly from their origin, complete with exhaustive step-by-step brewing instructions. Occasionally, it was merely a handwritten note. The script was sharp and cursive, Sumien's unmistakable hand. But the content was awkwardly simple. It's raining today. Remember your umbrella. My reaction remained cold and consistent. I never even opened them. The flowers were left untouched at the inn's entrance, abandoned to wither and rot under the sun and rain. The invitations and cards went straight into the trash bin by the gate. The rare ingredients were given away to the elderly lady next door. The landlady, watching this with a pained expression, couldn't help but chime in while brewing tea. Jingzhou, that Miss Su. She sends gifts daily but never dares to show her face. It truly seems like she's realized her sins and is drowning in regret. I was focused on sketching a delicate bookmark, my pen never wavering as I gave a curt indifferent hum. I remained focused on sketching that delicate bookmark, my pen never wavering as I gave a curt indifferent hum. Certain sins aren't erased just because the sinner regrets them. And certain wounds don't heal just because of some expensive gifts. The landlady let out a heavy sigh and didn't push further. Meanwhile, the internet was anything but quiet. Media outlets, with a predatory sense of smell, followed Sumien's warning about not disturbing us, tracing the breadcrumbs back to find the target. Someone eventually sniffed their way to the water town, uncovering the location of the Jiwan guest house, desperate to leak a viral scandal. But before the draft was even finished, the news agency was served with a brutal high-stakes legal notice from Su Group's legal team. Simultaneously, traffic on all major platforms was throttled by a mysterious, overwhelming power, nuking any related topics in seconds. Influencers trying to stage accidental encounters for clout never even made it into the ancient town, intercepted by a sudden surge in local tourist security and concerned residents who forced them to retreat. Under this bizarre and suffocatingly tight net of protection, my life miraculously maintained its surface-level peace. I knew exactly whose hand was behind this, but I felt zero gratitude. I only felt exhaustion and a sense of pure absurdity. Lu Ziqian, however, had plummeted from heaven straight to hell. The Lu family was bankrupt. Their villas and luxury cars were auctioned off to settle debts. The sycophants who once flattered him vanished like smoke, leaving him with a contact list where not a single person answered. He went from the worshipped young master of the Lu family to a pathetic joke that everyone actively avoided, drowning in debt and with nowhere to run. The crushing psychological fall and a bone-deep hatred burned through him day and night. He blamed every ounce of his misfortune on me. Through some shady back-alley connections, he reached out to a group of desperate outlaws. He shoved a stack of cold hard cash toward them, his eyes bloodshot and face contorted as he rasped, "The money is yours. I want that man's face destroyed. I want him ruined, disgraced, and begging for death." A few evenings later, I was returning from an outdoor sketching session. As I passed the mouth of a secluded, desolate alleyway, a filthy, battered van, as I passed the entrance of a desolate, narrow alleyway, a grimy, beat-up van suddenly screeched to a halt, right beside me. Two burly, muscular arms lunged out with violence, clamping over my mouth, and dragging me brutally into the vehicle. I didn't even have a chance to scream for help, before a towel, reeking of chemicals, was pressed against my nose and mouth. I thrashed and struggled for a few heartbeats, but my consciousness faded into darkness with terrifying speed. The last thing I saw was Lu Ziqian, his face a distorted mask of pure insanity and vitriol. Sumien was in the middle of a critical high-stakes international video conference. On the screen, a foreign representative was detailing the partnership, but her phone on the desk began to vibrate violently. It was the emergency line from the details she'd sent to shadow and protect me in secret. President Su, something went wrong. Mr. Jiang was abducted at an alleyway entrance by a van. Our team lost the trail. They know how to evade pursuit. The plates are fakes. Every drop of color drained from Sumien's face instantly. Her voice was a jagged rasp. Location. The bodyguard reported quickly. Last known position. Heading toward the old industrial district in the west. But there are too many forks in the road, and it's a surveillance blind spot. Sumien cut him off, her words coming out with frightening speed. Infused with a ruthless desperation on the edge of collapse, mobilize every single soul available. Seal off every exit path leading out of the city. Scour every warehouse in that old industrial zone. Every last abandoned factory. Alert the authorities. Use my name to demand high-priority emergency cooperation. She slammed the phone down. Without a single word of explanation to the boardroom, she snatched her keys and bolted out. In the underground garage, she gunned the engine. It let out a feral, beastly roar as the car launched forward like a guided missile. Suddenly, she slammed on the brakes, whipping out her phone to dial another number, her voice trembling from sheer terror and extreme tension, and vibrating with a violent tremor. "Get the chopper to the company rooftop right now and wait for me. Fly to Nanjun at maximum velocity. Wait for me on the rooftop immediately. Fly to Nanjun at full throttle." Only one thought remained spiraling frantically in her mind. Jingzhou must be safe. He absolutely cannot come to any harm. Throughout the journey, her hands shook so badly she could barely grip the controls. Even the deafening roar of the helicopter couldn't drown out the frantic thundering rhythm of her heart. Terror surged over her like freezing, suffocating seawater. Every breath she took tasted like the metallic tang of blood. She didn't dare contemplate what a lunatic like Lu Ziqian was capable of doing, nor could she bear to imagine the injuries Jingzhou might endure. If he really, Su Mian abruptly slammed her eyes shut, then forced them open again, glaring intensely at the gray overcast horizon ahead. Inside the derelict warehouse, the air was thick with the stagnant stench of rust and decay. I was tossed onto the freezing concrete floor, my hands bound behind me. Lu Ziqian loomed over me, brandishing a wicked razor-sharp dagger. The blade's tip glinted with a lethal chill in the dim light. He crouched down, patting my cheek with the freezing flat of the blade. He hissed with an icy malice, "Zhang Jingzhou, you've finally fallen into my clutches. Look at this face. It's quite handsome, isn't it? This is the face that bewitched Mian Mian, right?" I turned my head to avoid the edge of the knife, my expression remaining stoic, with only a cold dead silence lingering in my eyes. He continued his taunt. "You know what? Originally I just wanted to carve up your face, to turn you back into a true hideous freak, just to see if Mian Mian would still want you. But now I've changed my mind." Before he could finish his sentence, there was a deafening crash. The rusted iron doors of the warehouse were violently kicked open from the outside. Blinding light flooded the space, and a silhouette appeared against the glare, charging in with a wave of chilling, murderous intent. It was Su Mian. Her gaze instantly locked onto me on the floor. Seeing I was intact merely bound that single moment. The sight of the crude iron wires binding me, only then did her frantic heart settle back into her chest, even if just slightly. But then her eyes locked onto the blade in Lu Ziqian's grip, and exactly where that lethal tip was pointed. Her pupils dilated in instant horror. She spoke with a frigid, piercing authority. "Lu Ziqian, release him." Lu Ziqian was jolted by the explosive entry, his hand flinching violently, causing the blade to carve a thin crimson line across my neck. Seeing Su Mian, he was momentarily stunned, before erupting into a high-pitched, manic cackle. He violently yanked my hair back, forcing my head up to face Su Mian directly. "Su Mian, you finally showed up. Look at him. Take a good long look at this man. What is so special about him? Besides this pathetic face, what has he got that makes you treat me like this? To ruin the Lu family like this?" Su Mian's gaze was glued to my face, watching the beads of blood welling from the cut on my neck. Her heart felt as if an invisible hand was crushing it, a pain so intense it left her nearly suffocated. She stated coldly, "Let him go. Name your price, anything." Lu Ziqian laughed as if he'd heard the world's greatest joke. "Ha ha ha, my price. I want you to marry me. Tell me right now, right in front of this man's face, that you'll be mine." Su Mian's expression didn't even flicker. She declared with lethal conviction, "Never. I will never want anyone but him." Lu Ziqian spiraled into a hysterical frenzy. "Ha ha ha ha. Fine, such undying devotion. Then I'll start by carving up his face. Let's see if you still love him when he's a hideous freak." Su Mian's eyes burned with a murderous fire. Every word hissed through her clenched teeth. "If you dare lay a single finger on him, I will make you beg for the sweet release of death." As she spoke, she remained imperceptibly calm, slowly, meticulously inching her way forward. Lu Ziqian had completely lost his grip on reality. The hand gripping the knife shook with violent tremors. As he shrieked, "Then try me, just watch and see if I won't." Before the words even left his mouth, his wrist snapped forward. He put his full strength into the strike, slashing the blade downward, aimed directly at my cheek. The jagged blade hissed as it ruthlessly sliced toward my cheek, in the exact heartbeat that the blade descended. Su Mian moved like a predator pouncing on its prey, igniting with explosive speed as she lunged forward. She didn't try to grab the weapon. Instead, she used her own body as a shield, smothering me completely to protect me beneath her. Simultaneously, her left hand gripped Lu Ziqian's wrist. Lu Ziqian let out a guttural shriek, and though the blade was forced off course, it still slashed down, burrowing deep into Su Mian's shielding right forearm. Gushing crimson immediately erupted, soaking her sleeve in a matter of seconds. Su Mian let out a muffled groan, her face turning deathly pale from the agonizing shock. Then came a sharp, sickening crack. A bodyguard stormed in, seizing Lu Ziqian's right hand and twisting it with raw fury, accompanied by an even more piercing scream from Lu Ziqian. His wrist bone was snapped clean through. The dagger clattered onto the concrete floor. The guard kicked the weapon away, grabbing the writhing, pathetic Lu Ziqian and slamming him face first into the ground. He pinned him down, knee buried deep into his spine. The entire sequence happened in the blink of an eye. Throughout it all, Su Mian's body remained anchored, providing an airtight sanctuary over me, intercepting every ounce of potential harm. Only then did the rest of the security detail swarm the room, swiftly neutralizing and restraining the few stunned, terrified thugs. They pinned the howling Lu Ziqian into the dirt. The lead guard saw Su Mian's mangled, bleeding wound and turned ghost white with horror. "President, sue your arm." But Su Mian acted as if she were immune to the pain. She didn't spare a single glance at her own gruesome injury, nor did she care about Lu Ziqian's pathetic wailing. With trembling fingers, she began to claw at the coarse hemp ropes around my wrists. Her movements were frantic, yet they carried a sense of near sacred tenderness, as if terrified of causing me even a flicker of pain. Jingzhao, don't be scared. It's over. It's all over now. I'm here, I'm right here, don't be afraid. As the ropes fell away, they left a ring of angry, vivid red welts on my skin. Sumian's pupils contracted at the sight. She cradled my hands, wanting to check them, but afraid to touch. Her eyes swept over my body with frantic urgency, and when she spotted that hairline crimson scratch, etched onto my cheek by the blade, a tidal wave of primal fury and murderous intent erupted in her eyes. She whirled around toward the Lu Ziqian, who was pinned to the dirt, glaring as if she intended to shred his soul into 1,000 pieces. But when she turned back to face me, her voice cracked with agonizing heartache. Does it hurt? Are you injured anywhere else? I'm taking you to the hospital immediately. She reached out to support me, but her arm froze mid-air, trembling with helpless hesitation. From the abduction to being held at knife point, to Sumian's explosive entry and the bloody takedown of Lu Ziqian, it had all unfolded in a chaotic blur. I remained seated on the freezing floor, hands bound, maintaining a chilling composure from start to finish. Only when Sumian, ignoring her own mangled and bleeding arm, attempted to help me up, did I finally offer a reaction. I spoke with a hollow, flat tone. Sumian, is your damsel in distress performance finally over? Sumian's entire body stiffened, as if she'd been doused with a bucket of ice-cold water, freezing her from her scalp down to her very marrow. She stared at me in shattered disbelief, the remaining color draining from her face until she was ghostly. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't summon a single sound. I locked eyes with her, my gaze devoid of even a flicker of warmth, filled only with a barren, desolate indifference. This time you took a blade from me. What's next? Will you only feel satisfied once you've sacrificed your life? Sumian, your love arrived far too late, and it carries a weight that is far too heavy. I paused for a heavy beat, letting each word act like a jagged ice pick, shattering whatever was left of Sumian's heart. I said it's far too late, and the burden is simply too much. I let the silence hang, each syllable sharp and piercing, burrowing deep into Sumian's core. I can't afford this. After speaking, I looked away, refusing to acknowledge her, nor the arm that shook violently because of my words, the arm still drenched in flowing crimson blood. I pushed off the cold concrete and stood up on my own, casually brushing the filth and dust from my clothes, smoothing out the wrinkles in my shirt. Then I turned toward the warehouse exit, walking calmly toward the rhythmic flashing of police sirens that were rapidly approaching the scene. My silhouette was straight and resolute, never sparing even a final glance at the woman who had nearly sacrificed her arm for me, who now stood frozen in place as if plunged into an abyss, following the warehouse nightmare. I didn't linger a second longer than necessary. After cooperating with the police for my statement and answering every mandatory question, I returned to the Zhaiyuan guest house. I had no heavy luggage to speak of, just a few basic changes of clothes, some art supplies, and the sketchbook that had been my constant companion. I politely declined the landlady's anxious pleas for me to stay, settled my bill in full, and in the pale hazy light of dawn, I vanished from this misty water town without a sound. I left just as quietly as I had arrived. When Sumian finally received the news, she was in the hospital tending to the gruesome gash on her arm. The anesthesia was fading, leaving the wound throbbing with pain. Yet she didn't so much as flinch. She merely stared at her phone screen, desperate for any scrap of information regarding my whereabouts. The phone rang. It was the details she had sent to shadow me. The voice on the other end was frantic. President Su, Mr. Jiang is gone. Our men were stationed at every entrance of the old town, but we never saw him leave. He must have used a disguise or taken an uncharted route. I'm so sorry, President Su, we've lost him. The phone slipped from her palm, clattering onto the floor. Sumian didn't seem to hear it. She sat paralyzed on the hospital bed, staring out at the dull leaden sky through the window, her eyes completely hollow. Once again, I had left, and this time it was more final, staring out at the dull leaden sky through the window, her eyes completely hollow. Once again, I had left, and this time it was even more absolute, more uncompromising than before. She could already vividly imagine exactly how calmly I packed my belongings, how skillfully I evaded every watchful eye, and how, like a wisp of rising smoke, I vanished into the pre-dawn mist of the ancient park. I didn't want a single thing he offered. Not his gifts, not his repentance, and not his protection. I didn't even want the chance for a humble reconciliation that he had nearly traded his life to obtain. My only desire was to escape, to put as much distance between us as possible until he was nothing but a fading memory. A colossal panic and a crushing sense of powerlessness surged over her like a freezing tide, swallowing her whole in an instant. This was a pain deeper than the fear of my abduction. With the kidnapping, she at least knew where I was. She knew the enemy was out in the open. But now I was truly gone. I had discarded her. This realization was like a white-hot jagged blade, viciously carving back and forth through her heart. She barked out desperate orders to her subordinates: find him, leverage every single connection we have. I don't care about the cost or the methods used. Tear the world apart and find him for me. The massive machinery of the Su group roared to life, but I had evaporated like a sinchua salsakitas. tribulity or sharp sort of it on shenanigans. Static intensities in the extension in the days that is. Shit, they get it. My ID card showed no further activity, and my bank accounts remained stagnant and dead. It was as if I had predicted her every move, using the most primitive and untraceable methods to completely scrub my existence from the world. The wound on Sumien's arm, aggravated by her refusal to rest, kept reopening, becoming severely infected and inflamed. A persistent high fever ravaged her body, yet she ignored the agony dragging her sick form through a manic, obsessive search. As the days bled into weeks, the flickers of hope began to die out. Sumien's mental state crumbled at a visible, terrifying speed. She began to drown her sorrows in alcohol. In her office, her home and her car, empty bottles were scattered everywhere. In the dead of night, she would huddle with a bottle, scrolling obsessively through the few precious photos of me saved on her phone. Most were just stiff ID photos from our marriage certificate, or candid side profiles where my face was obscured as I looked down. Just those cold formal marriage certificate photos, and those distant silhouettes where my face remained hidden. She obsessively reviewed the surveillance footage from the accident, staring at my despairing eyes as I stood outside the hospital ward, and rewatching my cold stoic rejection in the Watertown bar, haunted by my distant thousand-mile stare. Every frame became a razor-sharp blade flaying her soul. When Shen Nunqiao came to visit, he barely recognized the figure curled up on the sofa, with sunken eyes, reeking of stale alcohol, and a gaze as hollow as a pool of stagnant water. This woman was a ghost of the once high-spirited, composed and untouchable Sumien. Shen Nunqiao let out a heavy sigh, kicking aside the empty bottles littered on the floor, before sitting beside her. Mian Mian Kit, he said, if you knew it would end in this much agony, why did you ever start this mess? Sumien didn't offer a single word in response, merely clutching her bottle, staring blankly into the thick, suffocating darkness outside. Shen Nunqiao took the bottle from her hands and set it aside, looking at her with pity, his voice laced with complexity. You're truly wrecked this time. You've fallen into a pit you can't crawl out of. Sumin's body gave a nearly imperceptible tremor. She slowly turned her head, looking at Shen Nunqiao. I can't find him anymore. Nunqiao, I can't find him anywhere. I've lost him forever. She lowered her head, burying her face in her hands, as her shoulders began to shake with uncontrollable sobs. Shen Nunqiao averted his eyes, feeling a suffocating tightness in his chest. He had never seen Sumien in such a pathetic state, fragile, desperate, and ready to shatter at a touch. The prolonged binge drinking, the chronic insomnia, the violent emotional swings, and the recurring infections in her mangled arm that she stubbornly refused to treat properly. Sumien's body finally reached its breaking point. During a high-level executive video conference, as she listened to her subordinates' reports, she felt a sudden agonizing cramp in her stomach. A metallic sweetness rose in her throat, and in the next second, before everyone's horrified eyes, a spray of dark crimson blood splattered across the polished surface of the conference table. The room erupted into total chaos. Shouts of President Su echoing through the air as the boardroom descended into a panicked frenzy. The board members shrieked in horror, President Su! The entire conference room descended into utter mayhem. Sumien was rushed to the emergency room immediately. The diagnostic results were dire acute gastric hemorrhaging, severe clinical neurasthenia, and systemic complications from the infected wound's high fever. The doctor reviewed the charts with a grim scowl, addressing Mother Su and Shen Nunqiao, who had rushed over. The patient's body is dangerously overextended. Her mental strain is at a catastrophic level, and she is actively resisting any form of treatment. If this persists, the fallout will be irreversible. Sumien remained unconscious on the hospital bed for 2 days. The fever refused to break, trapping her in a chaotic, feverish hallucination. The dreams were a distorted, surreal blur, all centered on our very first encounter. She saw me frantically scrubbing at the grime on my face, only to look more pathetic as the stain smeared further. She saw me standing quietly at the marriage registry, my fingertips trembling as I signed the papers. She saw me in an apron brewing porridge in the kitchen, my profile softened by the rising clouds of steam. She heard my voice asking if I was unworthy of her. She saw me in the police station rasping why. Finally, every image shattered and spiraled, coalescing into that derelict warehouse in the Watertown, and the words that had condemned her to a living hell. Sumien, your love arrived far too late, and the burden is far too heavy. I can't afford this. On the bed, Sumien moaned in agony. No, Jingzhou, don't leave me. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Cold sweat drenched her brow. as her hands clawed desperately at the empty air, trying to seize a vanishing phantom. Jingzhou, come back. I'm begging you. Shen Nanqiao and the assistant watched from the bedside, silently averting their eyes in pained discomfort. On the third day, Sumian's fever finally receded. She regained consciousness, but her eyes remained hollow, staring at the ceiling, paralyzed, like a lifeless marionette whose strings had been cut. The doctors insisted on absolute rest and quiet. She could not withstand any further emotional trauma. Mother Su, her eyes swollen from weeping, wanted to speak her mind, but ultimately just let out a heavy sigh and retreated from the room in defeated silence. Several more days passed. Sumian was finally fit enough to leave her bed. Her first priority wasn't following her treatment plan, nor was it managing the mountain of corporate files, but visiting a high-security asylum located on the desolate outskirts of the city, deep within the intensive psychiatric ward. She finally confronted Lu Ziqian. In a mere 10 days, the once dashing and arrogant heir of the Lu family had withered into a skeletal gaunt wreck, his gaze shattered and unfocused, muttering incoherent depressive gibberish to himself. Occasionally he'd erupt in high-pitched wails or manic laughter. When his eyes landed on Sumian, he was dazed at first, but then recognition flickered in his warped mind. He lunged toward the reinforced observation window, slamming his fists against the thick, cold glass. With a contorted expression, he rasped, "Mian Mian, you're here. You've come to bail me out, haven't you? I realize I messed up. I never should have laid a finger on Jiang Jingzhou. Forgive me. Tell them to let me go." Su Mian stood outside the glass in her hospital gown, an overcoat draped loosely over her shoulders. Though her face was ashen and pale, her eyes were as cold as ancient, unforgiving ice. She watched the hysterical Lu Ziqian from the safety of the hall, her face a mask of absolute stoicism. "This place suits you perfectly." Lu Ziqian's hands froze against the glass, his eyes widening in shattered disbelief. Su Mian continued in a flat, monotone voice, "Enjoy the rest of your miserable life here. The medical staff will take special care of you, ensuring that for every sin you've committed, you pay the ultimate price in full." Lu Ziqian let out a primal guttural roar. "No! Su Mian, you can't do this to me. I loved you. Everything I did was out of love for you. That man Jiang Jingzhou stole you from me. He deserved to die." Lu Ziqian's frantic shrieks and vile curses were muffled by the heavy glass, fading into a pathetic, distorted hum. Su Mian didn't spare him a second glance, turning to the hospital director with a cold directive. "Proceed exactly as we discussed. Without my explicit permission, no one is allowed to visit him, absolutely no one. That includes the entire Lu family." The director bowed respectfully and replied, "As you wish, Miss Su." Su Mian turned and walked away, leaving the desperate echoing wails and the sound of glass thumping far behind her. The corridor was vast and eerily quiet, filled only by the rhythmic click of her own footsteps. This was one of the few things she could still do for me. She moved toward the window. Outside, the sunlight was blindingly bright, and the garden grass was a lush, vibrant green. But her inner world had long since become a wasteland, buried under a perpetual frozen blizzard. She had extinguished her own light, condemning herself to a long, dark walk with no dawn in sight. 2 years is plenty of time to wash away the traces of the past. Life in this remote border town was peaceful and slow. I settled down here, using my savings to buy a small storefront facing the street. One half was my living quarters, the other a modest studio. I took on freelance design contracts online and helped local craftsmen with their specialized work. My days were simple, frugal, yet deeply fulfilling. Walking down the cobblestone paths still drew plenty of attention, from the local young women to the tourists who came for the scenery and flirted with me. I always responded with a polite, distant smile, maintaining my boundaries with a gentle but firm resolve. The scar in my heart had finally scabbed over and stopped bleeding, leaving behind a hard, unyielding knot that I could still feel. I no longer carried the weight of hatred, but I no longer let myself trust easily either. The name Sumian slowly transformed into a dominant, prestigious symbol on the front pages of every financial magazine. Under her almost self-mutilating work ethic, the Su Group's empire expanded aggressively, reaching its tentacles into every industry. She kept her personal life immaculate, with no men allowed near her. Rumors began to circulate wildly. They said President Su was remaining chaste for her ex-husband, a tale of devotion that moved everyone to tears. Only Shen Nanqiao, who occasionally visited her home, knew about the thick stack of photos locked in her study drawer. He would only offer a silent pat on her shoulder, before departing without a word. Those images were the only balm left to soothe Su Mian's fractured soul. The curtains rose on the world's most prestigious international jewelry design competition. The grand champion would secure a legendary partnership with the titan of the luxury fashion industry. It was the ultimate coveted springboard for designers across the globe. I stumbled upon the official call for entries and stared at the screen in a long, heavy silence. I eventually closed the tab and returned to the unfinished objective currently in my hands. A few days later, I quietly submitted a meticulously crafted design manuscript, sending my vision out into the world. Months later, the official list of finalists was finally broadcasted, and the name Ziyuan stood out in bold, undeniable print. My creative vision fusing a unique Eastern aesthetic with a sharp modern structure, had absolutely captivated the entire panel of preliminary judges. The luxury investment arm of the Su Group happened to be one of the premier sponsors for this global event. The organizers sent a series of earnest, desperate pleas, begging their biggest benefactor, Miss Su Mian, to grace the finals and the grand awards ceremony with her presence. Su Mian was on the verge of declining the invitation, until her eyes scanned the roster of finalists. Her fingers froze instantly on the trackpad. The name Jingzhou pierced her eyes like a white-hot needle. She stared at those two characters for an eternity, so long that her assistant assumed she wouldn't respond. Just as the assistant turned to draft a polite refusal, she heard Su Mian's flat, hollow voice. "I'll attend." She paused for a heartbeat, then added, "Arrange my seat in a hidden corner. I will not be accepting any interviews." The assistant was stunned, but quickly bowed in compliance. The finals were a dazzling spectacle of light. I sat in the competitors section, clad in a minimalist, sharp black suit. My expression remained stoic and composed. My gaze focused intently on the stage. Occasionally, I leaned over to exchange a few words with other designers, a faint, effortless smile playing on my lips. Su Mian sat in the most inconspicuous corner, shrouded in the darkness of the shadows. Yet her eyes were filled with a primal greed, tracking my every move with a gaze that bordered on physical pain. It had been 2 long years. I looked even more striking now, not just because of my features, but because her eyes were so hungry, chasing that silhouette with a desperate, aching longing. 2 years, I had become even more striking, not just in appearance, but in the profound, unshakable composure radiating from within, a brilliant aura of self-assurance. When I smiled, a faint glimmer danced in my eyes, a spark she had never once ignited, a light she had once tried to extinguish with her own hands. Her heart throbbed with a sharp, sudden pang, yet a strange, bittersweet sense of relief surged through her. I was thriving. Without her, I had finally discovered my true self, like a tree that weathered the storm to finally take root and flourish. The moment of the awards ceremony arrived. My collection had secured the grand prize. As my name echoed through the hall, the room erupted into thunderous, deafening applause. I rose and made my way toward the stage, my stride calm and effortless, my posture perfectly straight. The spotlight chased me, drenching me in its glow. I stood before the microphone to deliver my acceptance speech. Su Mian gazed up from the audience, separated by the boisterous, surging crowd, the dazzling, blinding lights, and a vast, insurmountable distance. She was looking up at a star that had suddenly ascended forever out of reach. This was our long-awaited reunion, the closest we had ever been, yet the farthest apart we would ever feel. Then came the charity auction segment. My winning masterpiece was the grand finale. Once the auctioneer concluded the introduction, the opening bid was already staggering. The numbers climbed with aggressive, frantic speed. Just as the bidding slowed at a record-breaking high, from the silence of the shadowed corner, a paddle was raised. Number 28. Maison Bissu has doubled the current bid. The entire room fell into a stunned silence. Every head turned in unison toward that dark corner. Su Mian sat there, her expression as unreadable as deep water, completely indifferent to the sea of inquisitive stares. Whenever a rival dared to raise the price, she didn't hesitate. For a single second before raising her paddle again, she simply doubled the amount every time. Her stance was ruthless, declaring her absolute dominance over the item. A wave of frantic whispers filled the air. I remained seated on the stage. My gaze drifted calmly toward the shadows where she sat, devoid of any shock, devoid of any ripple of emotion, as if I were observing a total stranger in the bidding war. The price skyrocketed to a point where my gaze held no surprise, remaining utterly still and indifferent, like looking at a complete stranger across a crowded room. The price surged toward a truly staggering, astronomical figure. The gavel finally struck. Sold. Congratulations to Ms. Su Bidder, number 28. Applause erupted once more, laced with gasps of pure disbelief. Su Mian stepped onto the stage to claim her prize. Protocol dictated a formal handshake with the designer. She approached me, the stage lights creating a blinding halo. She extended her hand, her fingers betraying her with a nearly imperceptible tremor. My hand was warm and steady as I took hers, releasing it after a brief professional contact. A polite practice smile was etched perfectly across my lips. I spoke in a voice that was tranquil and composed. My thanks to President Su for supporting such a noble cause. Su Mian stared deep into my eyes, 1,000 unspoken words burning and choking her chest, only to finally escape as a single, raspy sentence. Your work is breathtaking. Congratulations. My smile remained fixed and neutral, giving a slight formal nod. Thank you. The formalities concluded as we exited the stage. The backstage corridor was narrow and cramped, forcing us to walk side by side for a fleeting moment. She exerted every ounce of her iron self-control, just to regulate her shallow breathing, offering no further probes or questions. Just as we were about to diverge into our separate worlds, she suddenly tilted her head toward me, and in a whisper meant only for our ears. She spoke with rapid desperation. Knowing you're okay is enough. I didn't break my stride for a second, acting as though I hadn't heard a word. Or perhaps I had, but it simply didn't matter anymore. I walked straight toward the group, waiting for me nearby. A circle of fellow young, ambitious designers. I joked about something merging into the crowd without looking back. Soo-mian spent a fortune to secure her ex-husband's masterpiece, culminating in that brief icy handshake on stage, a scene captured by 1,000 flashing lenses. The story instantly hijacked the headlines, triggering a viral firestorm. Broken mirror mended light at the end of the rich CEO's pursuit. President Su's undying obsession? The wild rumors and online speculation were everywhere, but I completely disabled all social media notifications on my phone. I threw myself into my latest mural project on the town's main street, severing all ties with the toxic noise of social media. I focused solely on the physical labor of my mural work. The mindless gossip had absolutely nothing to do with me. Until late one night, a few days later, the floorboards buckled violently and shadows danced as lamps swayed. A heavy thundering boom echoed from the distance, followed by the shriek of shattering glass and faint, panicked screams. Earthquake. I scrambled out of bed instantly, diving beneath the sturdiest table in the room. The tremors raged for what felt like an eternity before, gradually subsiding into a deathly quiet. I grabbed my phone, but the signal bars flickered and died. Emergency alerts soon flooded the screen as the network struggled. A massive earthquake had struck the neighboring county. The epicenter was dangerously close to us. Communication lines were severed, leaving everyone in the dark. Forcing myself to stay calm, I packed a basic emergency kit and bolted out the door, joining the town's spontaneous group of volunteer rescuers. Meanwhile, Soo-mian was on the other side of the globe, about to finalize a multi-billion-dollar contract that would define the conglomerate's strategy for the next decade. Just as the nib of her pen touched the paper, her assistant's phone vibrated with a frantic urgency. The assistant glanced at the screen, her face instantly drained of all color. She leaned in and whispered a few words into Soo-mian's ear. Soo-mian's hand froze mid-signature, the pen nearly snapping. She looked up at the bewildered representatives across the table, her complexion turning a ghostly sickly white. "My apologies," she said, her voice sharp and trembling. "An emergency. We accept all your terms, just sign it." Without another word, she lunged upward, the chair clattering behind her. Leaving the business partners in a state of stunned confusion, she sprinted out of the boardroom without looking back. Anxious shouts of President Su echoed behind her. The signing isn't finished yet. She was deaf to it all. She mobilized every resource at her disposal. The fastest flight paths, the nearest private airstrips, and then a high-speed vehicle, tearing across the cracked and trembling roads toward the town. The final stretch of the road was completely buried by a landslide. The route was impassable for any vehicle. Abandoning the car, she trekked through the mountain paths, dodging falling debris and choking on dust. She didn't give a damn about the danger, stumbling blindly through the jagged rocks and treacherous ruins. Inside her head, as she struggled through the wreckage with every uneven step, her mind was a total terrifying blank. She regretted everything, all that talk about letting go, about being content as long as Jingzhou was happy, and promising never to disturb my life again. Faced with the soul-crushing fear of losing him forever, those noble resolutions crumbled like ash. She could endure spending the rest of her life without me, rotting away in her own memories and bitter remorse. But she absolutely could not endure a world where I simply ceased to exist. Absolutely not. As evening approached, she finally reached the epicenter's outskirts, a makeshift relocation camp in a small battered town. She grabbed every person who passed by, asking in a raw, raspy voice, "Have you seen a man named Jiang Jingzhou? He's tall, incredibly handsome, with eyes that shine so bright." Yep. Most people just shook their heads in dazed confusion, until a dust-covered woman pointed toward a temporary medical station in the distance. She said, "Over there. I think there's a really handsome young man helping hand out supplies." Soo-mian's heart hammered against her ribs. She whirled around and sprinted toward the site. The crowd at the medical post was relatively orderly, with a handful of volunteers distributing bottled water and basic rations. She spotted me in a single heartbeat. I was kneeling in front of a little girl who was softly sobbing to herself, holding out a pack of biscuits, while whispering something gentle to soothe her. Soo-mian skidded to a violent halt, and it felt as if the blood in her veins only truly began to flow again in that exact second, surging so hard it made her ears ring. The colossal wave of relief and the lingering terror submerged her like a relentless tsunami. She stumbled forward, staggering toward me. I finished comforting the child, straightening up to reach for another bottle of water. As I turned, I collided with a pair of bloodshot eyes that were staring at me with a death grip intensity. I froze in my tracks, staring at the woman who had materialized out of thin air, looking absolutely disheveled and broken. Her hair was a mess, her face streaked with grime and dust, yet those eyes burned with a terrifying, piercing light. They were churning with far too many emotions, things I didn't understand, and things I had no desire to understand. Such a chaotic storm of feelings I couldn't decipher, and honestly had no interest in deciphering. Shook raw aggression, pure panic, and something bottomless. Something so intense it threatened to sear me where I stood. Soo-mian lunged toward me, her arms reaching out as if to pull me into a desperate embrace, only to jerk to a violent halt before she could touch me. Her hands hovered in midair as she looked at me with reddened eyes, scanning me from head to toe over and over again. Her voice was a fractured, trembling mess. Are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere? Do you feel unwell? Tell me. I was scared to death. Jingzhou, you scared me to death. This woman who never gave an inch at the negotiation table, who was ruthless and decisive in the cutthroat business world, and who was always the pillar of icy composure, was now as terrified and fragile as a lost child who had finally miraculously found their way home. I shifted my gaze to the bustling crowd in the distance, my voice flat and indifferent. I'm perfectly fine. It's dangerous here. The aftershocks are constant. You shouldn't have come. Su Min stared at my stoic, calm profile, her heart feeling as if a massive hand had reached in and crushed it, the pain so suffocating she could barely draw breath. She choked out a sob. I know I shouldn't be here. I promised I wouldn't disturb your life again. But I couldn't stop myself, Jingzhou. I was wrong. I truly deeply realize my sins now. I'm not begging for your forgiveness, nor am I asking you to come back. She looked at me, tears blurring her vision into a watery haze. Yet she still struggled to memorize every detail of my face. She spoke with a frantic urgency. I only beg for you to stay alive, to live a life of peace, safety, and health. As long as you are well, nothing else matters to me. This was her most humble wish, and her true, albeit tragic, late-stage realization. It was no longer about possession, nor about toxic obsession, nor some self-righteous attempt at compensation. It was a pure, unadulterated hope for my well-being. I listened in profound silence, as a distant blare of rescue sirens, the frantic shouts of the workers, and the wails of children blurred into a chaotic symphony. After an eternity, or perhaps just a few fleeting seconds, I took a soft breath and turned my head back, letting my gaze settle on her still crimson, bloodshot eyes. Looking into those reddened eyes, I said, It's all in the past now, Su Mian. Su Mian's body shuddered violently as she let out a raspy, broken hum. I continued with a hauntingly calm tone. Thank you for everything you've done for the disaster zone. And thank you for finally letting go. It's time we both embrace a new life. Su Mian stared at me with a soul-piercing intensity, as if trying to etch the way I looked right now, the subtle flickers of my expression, and the absolute serenity in my eyes, into the very fabric of her soul forever. Then, with an agonizingly slow movement, she forced a smile, her voice impossibly tender. Okay? You deserve to be happy. Jingzhou, I looked at her and offered a faint smile. You too. My design career skyrocketed from that moment on. The grand competition had been merely the starting line. My brand gained legendary status on the international stage, transforming me into an independent, revered visionary. I became a constant fixture at global exhibitions and keynote speeches. I still carry a belief in love, but I am no longer in a desperate rush to find it, refusing to tether my worth to anyone else's existence. I am living my life with a brilliance that is entirely my own. Su Min remained unmarried for the rest of her life. No other man ever managed to cross the threshold of her heart. She became a titan of the business world, and a tragic legend of the social scene, the devoted, eternally single Miso Su whose heart belonged to a ghost. The Su group flourished into an unstoppable empire under her reign, yet she became increasingly reclusive and low profile, fading away from the public eye. Only Shen Nanqiao and a handful of old friends knew the truth, that every year on my birthday she would vanish for an entire day. No one knew where she went, but without fail on the following morning, my studio would always receive a bouquet of the freshest purple irises delivered by air. We continued to live under the same vast sky, on rare occasions within the pages of a financial interview, or a feature on the latest art and design trends. We catch fleeting glimpses of each other's progress, like two turbulent rivers that once violently collided, scarring one another before finally breaking free. We are now complete in our own worlds, our paths never to cross again.